In a previous video, I discussed the OSI model. In another video, I discussed data repeaters. In this video, I'm going to discuss data crashes. Now, how does a piece of data crash? Well, it's very simple. Let me show you this butt-ugly illustration. Now, I know I'm not the most creative person in the world. Just bear with me. Approximately, this right here, you can see, is your computer. And this is your Ethernet cord that hooks you up to the internet. And of course, it goes right back to Microsoft and to, say, Grandma's photos. Now, let's imagine a little scenario. Grandma's sitting there and she's playing around the computer and she decides to upload 50 photos. Say they're 12 megapixels apiece. Now, those are big file sizes. Think about it. You're talking 12 million pixels per picture, and you're talking about 50 pictures, so that's quite a size. Some even email accounts can't even handle that. Some can, some can't. Maybe she's got one that can. Alright, so she uploads about 50 pictures, and she emails them to you. Now, at the same time, Microsoft is sending you a critical update. And when they do, let me tell you something, if you don't take their update, you could have some real serious problems with your computer later on. So whenever they send you an update, just take it and don't ask questions. Alright? Well, now you got to keep in mind your Ethernet cable is like a one-lane highway. Alright, so here comes Grandma's pictures and here comes Microsoft's information, and it's going in the same Ethernet wire. Well, guess what? They crash. They crash and burn. And when this happens, of course, the data has to be resent. And that takes a lot of time. Well, this is not such a great big problem for you and I because these are just our local computers. But think about a grocery store, a department store, or some kind of electronics store like Best Buy. Now, all those cash registers are hooked up to one centralized computer. Alright? Now, this same centralized computer is probably also hooked up to a satellite dish outside. If you drive to some of these stores, you'll see this great big satellite dish at the very top of it. Well, their computer is hooked up to that satellite dish, but it's also hooked up to every single cash register in the store. So now the cash registers are sending information to the computer, and this satellite dish is receiving information from, say, Microsoft or from some corporate web server somewhere in some corporate headquarters. So it's receiving all this information at the same time through one wire. Well, guess what? Boom! It crashes. Now that's just that part of it, alright? Now, let's take this one step further. Do you remember a video where I talked about random access memory and how it was a buffer? And I told you that hard drive information gets sent to the RAM, and then eventually that RAM sends the information to a burner? Alright, same type of scenario. When you're receiving information from an Ethernet cable, it goes into the RAM first, then into your hard drive. Okay, it doesn't go into your hard drive right off the bat. It has to go to the RAM first, because the data traveling on the Ethernet travels at one speed and the hard drive spins at a different speed. So the RAM becomes a buffer, and it takes in that internet information, then it sends it to the hard drive. So your RAM's filling up with information from Microsoft, and then it's filling up with information from Grandma's photos, and then it's after a while the RAM just stops, because you only have so much RAM in your computer. For some people it's only a gig, some people have 2, I have 2. When you have more advanced computers, you can have 4 or 5 gigs of RAM. But however many gigs of RAM you have, it will fill up at some point, and when it does, kaboom! System shuts down. This is why sometimes the cash registers just suddenly stop. Or you have a Pinpad, and I'm sure you've seen these credit card Pinpads. You swipe your card and you push buttons. After a while, you start to push buttons and nothing seems to happen. Or how about the photo kiosk? Let's say you go and develop some pictures at a local drugstore. Haha. And you're pushing all the buttons, and all of a sudden the screen just freezes up. Alright? Well, that's because there are data crashes going on. That's the whole reason. Alright? And whether that data crash is a result of too much information going to that Ethernet cable, or it's because the RAM is just so full that it can't handle any more information, it doesn't matter either way, things are going to freeze up pretty quick. And that's what's called a data crash. Alright? Sometimes it's called a buffer overflow. Okay? It's called a buffer overflow. Because your RAM is filling up with more data than what it can handle, and finally just has to stop and say, whoa, I can't take any more. I mean, that would be the equivalent of somebody throwing you about 20 books and saying, now read them all at once. Yeah, right. So now you have an idea of what a data crash is, and I will talk about other computer subjects in a future video. So stay tuned.